Most people don't fear being alone. They fear what rises in the silence, the voices that echo, the doubts that linger, the pain they've hidden behind, "I'm fine." So they chase attention, validation, anything that sounds like stay. But here's the truth. No amount of attention can silence the chaos inside a soul that hasn't met itself. And the more you chase people to fill the gaps within, the deeper those gaps become. Ever wondered why one unanswered message can ruin your entire day? Why one person walking away feels like your whole world fell? It's not about them. It's about the version of you've built around needing them. But there's another way, a deeper strength, a quieter clarity, a life where your worth is not measured by who stays, but by how well you stand when they don't. Today, you'll learn 10 Stoic realizations that will help you detach with dignity, stand without seeking, and rebuild a self that doesn't need rescuing. And if you stay till the end, I'll share the most underrated Stoic practice, a shift so small, but so powerful. It can make you untangled, even from the person you thought you'd never let go. Let's begin today. We're not here to talk about loneliness. We're here to talk about something much deeper, the quiet dependency that hides behind your smile, that constant need to be seen, to be validated, to be chosen. But here's the truth most never admit. You don't miss them. You miss the version of yourself you only allowed to exist when they were around. And that is not freedom. So in this video, we'll break that cycle. I'll show you 10 Stoic shifts that will help you let go without guilt, stand strong without permission, and return to a you that is whole, even when you're alone. And if you stay until the end, I'll share a practice so simple, so overlooked. It might just unlock the emotional independence you've been seeking all along. Let's begin this reset together. Meet Leo for years. He was the strong one, the guy who made everyone laugh, the friend who always listened. But behind closed doors, Leo was sinking, not from pain, but from dependency he never named. Every silence made him anxious. Every unanswered message felt like rejection. Every empty Saturday, a reminder that he didn't know how to be alone with himself. Then, one day, everyone was busy. No replies, no calls, just him and the walls. Felt loud. He wanted to run, text someone, numb the discomfort. But something stopped him. He sat, he breathed, and he asked, "Why do I feel like I don't exist when no one's watching?" That's the moment he realized. His whole sense of self was built on others, not on truth, not on presence, not on his own reflection. That night, Leo didn't chase. He didn't beg. He didn't scroll endlessly to feel seen. He just stayed with the silence, with the discomfort, with himself. And in that quiet, something rebuilt. Not loud, not fast, but solid. A version of Leo that no longer needed applause to feel real. Just like Leo. Maybe you've been outsourcing your peace to people who were never meant to hold it. But the Ainan, Stoics believed, true power isn't about being surrounded. It's about being centered. And today, you'll learn how. Lesson 1. You don't need replies when you learn to hear your own voice. It starts so subtly. You send a message. They take a little longer to reply, so you wait, refresh, scroll up and down to double-check what you wrote. Then the doubt begins. Did I say too much? Did I sound needy? Are they pulling away? You're not addicted to them. You're addicted to the feeling of being acknowledged. And when that's delayed, you start to feel like you're disappearing. But here's the truth. The need for instant replies isn't about connection. It's about control. You want reassurance. You want validation. You want to know you still matter in someone else's world. But the Stoics would ask, why does someone else's silence make you question your own worth? The answer is uncomfortable, because it reveals a truth many run from. Most people don't actually know what their voice sounds like without an echo from someone else. And when your inner dialogue is constantly shaped by someone else's timing, you'll always feel like a guest in your own life. Here's what you need to hear. You are not being ignored. You are being invited to listen to the conversation that matters most, the one happening inside. Because the moment you can sit with silence, not as punishment, but as practice, you begin to build something rare. Inner authority. You stop needing replies to feel seen. You stop rereading old texts to feel connected. You stop chasing every blinking typing bubble like it's oxygen. Here's your stoic shift. Next time, they delay replying. Don't spiral, don't guess, don't beg for clarity. Instead, use that pause as a mirror. Ask, what part of me is afraid to feel unheard? What truth in me have I been avoiding by drowning in conversations? Then answer yourself, write, speak aloud, breathe, because your voice was never meant to be triggered only by someone else's presence. It was meant to be rooted in your own truth. And here's the image I'll leave you with. A flame doesn't go out just because no one sees it. It burns quietly, faithfully, patiently, until someone finally walks by and says, "That light has been waiting for me." But by then, you won't be waiting, you'll be shining, whether they show up or not. Lesson 2, you don't need closure when you accept that some endings were protection. You keep replaying it. That last conversation, that final message, the silence that followed. You tell yourself, if I just knew why, maybe I could move on. You're not looking for clarity, you're looking for permission to stop hurting. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Closure isn't something they give you, it's something you decide. And waiting for it is like standing at a locked door, hoping the person who slammed it shut will come back with the key. Sometimes they won't, sometimes they can't, because the truth is, the ending didn't break you. It revealed you. It showed you the parts of yourself that still believed love meant chasing, that attention meant worth, that endings meant you weren't enough. But the Stoics would ask, why does your peace still depend on someone who already left? You don't need them to explain the betrayal. You don't need them to apologize for the confusion. You don't need them to validate your pain. You just need to choose that this chapter is closed. Not because you're okay with how it ended, but because you're done bleeding over how it should have gone. Here's your Stoic shift. When the urge to reach out hits, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, am I seeking truth, or am I chasing a version of the past that never really existed? Then remember this. Closure is not an answer. It's an alignment, a quiet decision to protect your energy from further erosion. Visualize this. You're carrying a broken mirror. It's heavy, sharp, and every time you try to understand it, you cut yourself again. But the mirror can't be fixed. It can only be released. Because sometimes, the unanswered goodbye was the loudest form of protection. Sometimes their distance was the universe whispering, you're not losing peace, you're reclaiming it. So stop waiting for a final text. Stop checking if they viewed your story. Stop holding your healing hostage to their honesty. They walked away. Now you walk forward, and with every step, you build the version of you that doesn't ask, why did they leave? But instead says, thank you for showing me who I no longer have to be. Lesson 3. You don't need constant support when you've built inner stability. There's a moment right before the breakdown, right before the tears, the spiral, the need to vent. It's the moment where you pause and look around to see if anyone noticed. And when no one does, you feel invisible. You don't just want someone to talk to, You want someone to witness that you're not okay, and when no one shows up in that exact second, it feels like confirmation. Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I'm not worth checking on. Maybe I really am alone. But here's what the Stoics would say. You are not broken because you feel unsupported. You're simply being invited to support yourself for the first time. And yes, it hurts, it's heavy, it's terrifying, but it's also transformative. Because the truth is, if your emotional balance relies on who checks in, you've handed your peace to people who may not even realize they're holding it. And here's the harder truth. Sometimes the people you expect support from can't give it, not because they don't care, but because they're fighting their own silent storms. That doesn't make your pain invalid. It just means you need a new anchor, one that doesn't disappear when people get busy or distracted or simply don't understand your wounds. So what does inner support look like? It looks like saying, I'm not okay, and not needing an audience to feel heard, crying without shame, and knowing your own arms can hold you, writing down the storm, and realizing you're still here. Here's your Stoic shift. Next time the wave hits and no one picks up the phone, don't spiral. Don't assume you're unloved. Pause. Put your hand on your chest, feel your breath, and ask, what would I say to a friend right now if they felt exactly what I'm feeling? Then give that same compassion to yourself. Not because it replaces others, but because it reinforces thee. One relationship you'll have your entire life, the one with you. And here's the metaphor to remember, you're a house. People can visit, but they shouldn't be the ones holding up your walls. Build your foundation so solid that even when they leave, the roof doesn't collapse. Because when you learn to hold yourself, you stop resenting people for not holding you exactly the way you imagined. You start appreciating the quiet power of being your own home. And in that place, you no longer fear being too much. You no longer fear being misunderstood. You no longer need others to remind you of your strength. Because you finally know it was yours all along. Lesson 4. You don't need to be chosen when you've already claimed yourself, let's be honest. Most of the pain in relationships doesn't come from rejection. It comes from waiting to be picked. Waiting to be seen, to be validated, to be loved. First, so you can finally love yourself. Second, you sit in conversations, but all you hear is, do they like me? Am I enough for them? Will they choose me over everyone else? And when they don't, you don't just feel sadness. You feel invisible, like all your worth was tied to whether they said yes to you. But here's the truth the Stoics understood. You are not a product, you are a presence. You are not waiting to be picked. You are learning to stand with or without applause. Because the more you obsess over being chosen, the more you forget that you were never meant to sit around and hope for recognition. You were meant to rise, with or without witnesses. You were meant to say, I am worthy, even when the room is silent. Here's the shift. Being chosen feels good, but choosing yourself feels like freedom. It's when you walk away from people who only text when they're bored. It's when you stop shrinking just to stay in someone's comfort zone. It's when you stop dimming your truth just to stay invited. And yes, it's lonely at first, because when you stop chasing validation, you lose a lot of noise. But in that quiet, you find your clarity. You find the you that doesn't need to perform, that doesn't need to be better to be enough. You find the you who knows. I'm not here to fit into their narrative. I'm here to write mine. Here's your Stoic practice. Next time you catch yourself waiting for a reply, waiting for a compliment, waiting to feel seen, don't beg, don't over-explain, don't twist yourself to fit. Instead, say, I am not a question. I am a statement. And if they don't choose you, let them go. Because the version of you that needs to be chosen will always be waiting. But the version of you that has already claimed themselves, they don't wait. They walk, they create, they glow on their own terms. Imagine this. A mountain doesn't move just because someone forgot to admire it. It still stands, still grows, still reaches the sky. Be the mountain. And when someone comes along, worthy enough to see it, you won't need to ask, am I enough? Because you'll already know. I was always enough, even when no one clapped. Lesson 5. You don't need attention when you've reconnected with your core. Let's be real. We live in a world where seen often means validated, where silence feels like punishment, where attention isn't just desired, it's a form of survival. You post, you wait, you refresh, you crave those tiny symbols that say you matter. But the more you rely on those flickers, the more you lose yourself in a loop of external feedback. You start designing your identity around what works for others. You say what's safe, you post what pleases, you shrink what's raw to avoid too much. And the truth? You are not chasing connection, you are fleeing abandonment. You've made attention your oxygen, and without it, you feel like you're slowly fading. But here's what the Stoics believed. True power doesn't come from being seen, it comes from being self-aligned, because attention is loud. But alignment is peaceful, steady, uncorrupted. So here's the question. What if the attention you're craving is a distraction from the attention you're avoiding, your own? What if the ache you feel is not because the world is silent, but because you've been ignoring your own soul's whisper? It's time to reconnect, not to people, not to platforms, but to purpose. Here's your Stoic shift. Every time you feel the urge to seek attention, pause, breathe, and ask, what would I create right now if no one were watching? Then do that, not because it will get likes, but because it will bring you home. Because here's the truth. Your core doesn't need applause. It just needs space to breathe, to speak, to be. And the more you listen, the more you'll realize you were never designed to entertain the world. You were built to embody truth. Here's the image I'll leave you with. A lighthouse doesn't rotate to find attention. It stands, it shines, and the right ships find it. Be the lighthouse. Let your peace glow so deeply that even in isolation, you become a beacon, not for noise, but for what's real. Because when you reconnect with your core, you no longer need to be visible to feel seen. You see yourself, and that's where true stability begins. Lesson 6. You don't need control when you embrace the flow of reality. Control feels safe. It feels like planning 3 steps ahead. It feels like always having the answer. It feels like being 5 minutes early to avoid being 5 seconds vulnerable. But here's the truth you already know. Control is an illusion, no matter how many precautions you take. People still leave, plans still fail, life still surprises, and yet, you keep tightening your grip. You try harder, you overthink more, you analyze every text, every tone, every delay in response. All because one part of you still believes, if I figure it all out, maybe I won't get hurt again. But the Stoics would say, you suffer more in imagination than in reality. Control doesn't eliminate chaos, it simply exhausts you before the chaos even begins. You start fighting battles that haven't happened. You start grieving outcomes that never existed, and worst of all, you miss the moment, the one right here, because you were too busy trying to engineer the next one. Here's the deeper truth. Control isn't about planning, it's about fear. The fear of loss, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of surprise, because you've been burned before. and you swore you'd never let it happen again. But what if letting go wasn't about giving up? What if it was about coming back to the part of you that trusts reality more than your anxiety does? Here's your stoic shift. Next time you catch yourself micromanaging the situation, the person, the future, stop, breathe, and ask, what part of this is actually within my power? Because the moment you accept that you can't control others, you stop resenting them for acting outside your expectations. And the moment you stop gripping the future like it owes you an explanation, you start experiencing the present with clarity and softness. Here's the image. You're holding sand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips. But if you open your palm, it stays, it settles, it supports, it stays with you. Not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. Life is the same. The more you try to dominate it, the more disconnected you feel. But when you flow with it, when you trust the nature of things, you start to feel free. Not because things go your way, but because you no longer depend on them doing so to feel at peace. That's real control. Not over the world, but over your response to it. Lesson 7. You don't need their approval when you trust your inner compass. You hesitate before speaking. You rephrase your thoughts. You scan their face for signs of discomfort. Confusion. Judgment. You're not just communicating, you're auditioning, hoping that what you say will be enough to be accepted. Why? Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that being liked was safer than being real. But here's the stoic truth. You were not born to please. You were born to align, and the two are rarely the same. The more you seek their approval, the further you drift from your own compass. You start second-guessing instincts, doubting your voice, shrinking your values to fit their comfort. But who decided they were the judge? Who gave them the power to define what's enough? The Stoics believed that virtue, not popularity, is the only standard worth pursuing. So here's your Stoic shift. Every time you're about to bite your tongue, ask yourself, is my silence protecting peace or hiding truth? If your truth costs you their comfort, let it, because the version of you that bends for approval will never feel whole. But the version of you that stands gently but firmly, that's the version you'll finally respect in the mirror. Here's the image. A compass doesn't spin wildly to match each traveler's path. It stands true, it points north, no matter who questions it. Be your compass, not their mirror. Because when you walk in alignment, approval becomes irrelevant, and inner peace becomes inevitable. Lesson 8. You don't need apologies when you've made peace with the truth. Some people will never say, I'm sorry. Not because they didn't hurt you, but because facing it would mean they'd have to face themselves. So you wait, you hope, you replay the scene, hoping one day they'll look you in the eye and admit, I was wrong. But what if they never do? What if their silence isn't forgetfulness, but avoidance? And here's the stinging truth the Stoics knew. Waiting for someone to apologize is giving them power over your peace. You keep the wound open, hoping their words will seal it. But healing doesn't come from them. It comes from you finally deciding you don't need their permission to let go. Ask yourself, is the absence of their apology keeping the pain alive, or is it just keeping you attached to a version of the past that already ended? Here's your Stoic shift. When the ache of unspoken closure returns, say to yourself, I didn't deserve it, but I also don't need to carry it anymore. Their silence doesn't define the truth. Their lack of remorse doesn't erase your experience, and their inability to own it is not your burden to hold. Here's the image. You're standing in the rain. You can wait for them to bring you an umbrella, Or you can step inside, dry yourself off, and move on. Choose the shelter, choose the peace, choose you, because at the end of the day, freedom isn't getting the apology, it's no longer needing it. Lesson 9. You don't need to be understood when you're at peace with who you are. You try to explain, again and again, clarifying your intentions, justifying your silence, unpacking your pain, but still, they don't get it, and something inside you breaks, not because you were attacked, but because you were invisible. Because being misunderstood feels like erasure, like someone looked right through you and still mislabeled your soul. But here's the truth most never hear. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need the courage to stay grounded, even when they don't. The Stoics didn't chase explanation, they chased integrity. They knew that trying to explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you was just another form of spiritual exhaustion. So here's your Stoic shift. When the urge to over-explain rises, stop, breathe, check your center and ask, do I truly need to be understood, or am I just afraid of standing alone in my truth? Because if you've checked your heart, clarified your intention, and spoken with honesty, then rest. Let them misinterpret, let them twist, let them invent their version of the story. You don't need to chase the correction, you need to protect your clarity. Here's the image. You are not a headline to be consumed. You are a whole book, too complex for someone who only reads with assumptions. Close the chapter. Not your truth, just the need to be decoded by everyone. Because when you're finally at peace with who you are, the noise fades, the debate's quiet, and the people who truly see you, they don't need an explanation, they feel you, that's enough. Lesson 10, you don't need rescue when you realize you are always the anchor. There's a moment in pain where you look around and hope someone will come, someone to see you, to hold you, to say, it's okay, I've got you. But no one comes. Not because they don't care, but because sometimes they simply can't. They're busy, they're blind to your ache, or they've never learned how to stay when the water gets deep and you're left in the dark with nothing but your breath and the echo of, I can't do this alone. But what if that's the lie? What if the thing you've been waiting for was never someone else's presence, but your own? What if you were the calm in the storm, the ground beneath the tremble, the anchor you kept searching for in other hands? The Stoics knew this well. No one can save you, but you. Not in the harsh way the world throws it, but in the quiet, steady way that says, you have survived every moment you thought would break you, and you did it with you. So here's your Stoic shift. Next time you feel abandoned, pause, don't chase, don't plead, don't panic. Instead, whisper, I'm here, and that is enough. Put your hand on your chest, feel the strength that has carried you this far. Not perfect, not unscarred, but present, still standing, still breathing, still you. And here's the image I'll leave you with. You are not a raft, floating aimlessly waiting for someone to pull you to shore. You are the anchor, planted, steady, unmoved, even in chaos. So from this moment forward, don't wait to be saved. Become the safe place you've been seeking. Because the most powerful thing you'll ever realize is this: you were never lost. You just forgot that you were the lighthouse all along. So what do we do with all this? We stop waiting for the reply, for the apology, for the recognition, for someone to remind us we're enough. Because if Stoicism teaches us anything, it's this: peace doesn't come from being chosen, it comes from choosing yourself again and again and again. You don't need permission to walk away, to let go, to rebuild. All you need is one honest moment with yourself. So take a breath, feel your feet on the ground, and remember, you're not behind, you're not broken, you're becoming. stronger, stabler, and a little more stoic every single day. If this helped you pause, reset, and reconnect, then join us, subscribe, and let's keep building a stoic life together. And tell me below, what's one emotional dependency you're ready to release? Starting today, and when you're ready for the next step. Watch this next. How to detach without becoming cold. The stoic way to protect your peace. Thanks for growing with us. Thanks for standing tall. This is Stoicism philosophy, clarity in the chaos.